Asian Boss Girl is brought to you by Anchor, an easy way to make your podcast and get it out into the world. It's free, has creation tools that allow you to record and edit right from your phone or computer, and will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast on Anchor with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Here at ABG, Asian Boss Girl, we're big fans of music and audio content. Spotify is one of our favorite platforms. They have a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. If you're a premium user, you can download episodes to listen to offline. And you can easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram. Download the Spotify app, search for ABG, Asian Boss Girl, or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. Make sure to follow us so you never miss an episode of Asian Boss Girl. Welcome to ABG, Asian Boss Girl, a podcast for the modern-day Asian American woman. My name is Helen.
I'm Janet.
And I'm Mel.
In our last episode, we talked a bit about what it was like to grow up in an Asian household. We took a couple strolls down memory lane and talked about growing up and some of our memories. In today's episode, we wanted to dive in a little bit more deeply around topics of our current relationship with our Asian identity. So let's start off by kind of still backtracking a bit and thinking about, do you remember the moment that you realized you were Asian, that you are maybe different?
I want to say that I feel like I was lucky growing up in an apartment filled with family, love. We were never overtly proud, but also never ashamed of being Asian. I can't remember a moment where one of my family members instilled fear in me that I could be targeted because of my race or something like that, right? And I don't think I ever recall being different. I went to a public school in the city, and my best friend in kindergarten was a white girl, Amanda, and my best friend in first grade through middle school was Cambodian. Her name's Rita. And I felt like everyone around me was very diverse, so I didn't stick out like a sore thumb. It wasn't until high school when I was actually torn between my elementary and middle school friends who were really diverse and a group of friends that I had made in high school, which were all East Asian. And that's because I liked a guy that was in that group of East Asians. And it was interesting because my friends from elementary and middle school would be like, Helen, come play basketball with us like we normally do after school. And I'd be like, but I want to hang out with this other group because that guy's there. Freaking guys always ruin everything, right? But I remember because ethnically the groups were super different. I think that's when I realized oh, I see color now. That was the moment when I was like, I see color because these two groups are just so different. And I think in high school is when people were definitely aware of race. Even within their own race, Asian race, there's different ethnicities that people started to highlight. I think that's when I started to really think about just race in a different way.
How did that affect maybe your image of yourself?
That's a good question. I remember being kind of sad about it, but I think it might have been also a little bit of nostalgia of choosing a specific group over my elementary and high school friends. I remember that one day just saying no to playing basketball with them. And we used to do that all the time too, and in a court that's by all of our houses. And I was just like, is it because the Asian kids at school are cooler? They had a sense of I don't know. It's hard to say. It's there was a collectiveness to it, right? Where it felt like they were the cool kids. And I couldn't tell if it was because of race or not. But I remember that was a tough time for me to just start seeing the color of my skin. And am I going to the group of Asians because I feel like I just fit in physically with them? Or is it because of the guy? What is it? And yeah, I just felt kind of torn.
How about you, Mel? Do you remember the moment that you realized you were Asian? Especially because you said you've been going to Taiwan since you were really young. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I think this is a question I kind of struggled with because I'm trying to remember any distinct memories that I felt different. But I guess one memory I had growing up was I was friends with a lot of our neighbors on our streets, and where I grew up was very diverse. So my neighbors were Mexican, and my neighbors across the street were white and Mexican. And then so I remember when my neighbors would come over for dinner, I remember feeling oh, they don't know what we're eating. I felt the sense of oh, they're kind of uncomfortable or they're just uncertain. And I remember my mom would make a bowl of white rice and she put soy sauce over it for my neighbor because she liked it that way. And I was very like, what? Like, we don't eat it that way. And I felt like that's when I knew like something was different. And when people would come over to eat. But in terms of like, besides that, I didn't really feel like very, very different, or I didn't feel like I had a realization I was Asian because I grew up surrounded by a lot of Asian Americans. You know, like in high school, it was a norm that after school, all of us would go eat pho. Like, everyone would eat pho. No, it wasn't weird. And then boba was also a common thing for us. Like, where I grew up in high school, like, everyone would go to Tapioca Express after school to hang out. Like, that was a thing. Like, you know, nowadays boba's like, oh my God, boba. It's like the trend. It's the newest. It's like the cool thing. No, in high school, it was the norm. Like, everyone from my high school would get boba. Maybe it's because everyone from my high school, like a lot of them were Asian American. But the thing I learned, it's kind of like Helen said in high school, is that I learned the different types of Asian Americans because I think they are so different. Like I remember going to like a friend's house after school and feeling that like, oh, you guys look like me. We're very similar. But when they started speaking, I didn't understand what they're saying. And I was like, oh, you guys are Vietnamese. Oh, you guys are Korean. And then that's when I felt like there's a difference. For me, I learned about different other Asians by my friends and also by boys. Like I definitely remember freshman year of high school, my best friend was dating this Korean guy. My best friend's Taiwanese too. And she's like, Mel, do you want to go with me to this church? And I was like, sure. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm very open to like other like religions and everything. So I was like, okay. So I went to church with her and I had a crush on this drummer, this like Korean drummer. And then I added him on AIM. And then obviously like
at church, was he drumming at church?
He was like, Christian worship, like you play music.
Okay,
so like
cool.
I actually really enjoy like music. So I was like, I really enjoy like worship songs. And so obviously like I befriended him and we started talking on AIM. And so like I feel like I was exposed to other like Asian backgrounds, like just naturally just being a teenage girl, like being curious about like boys or like trying to explore friendships that way. But in terms of Asian,
man, are boys are our way into recognizing
your identities
and race?
No, it's not. My best friend is the one that told me, hey, she's the one that asked, do you want to go to church? I was like, okay. But I did grow up in a very like Asian American community. Like the minority where I grew up were white people, and we used to joke around that like I have one of my close friends white. We call him, his name's Jack. He grew up with a lot of like Vietnamese people. So we're like, Alex, are you like white? He's like, no, I'm Vietnamese. Like that's a joke because like our minority were white people where I grew up. So it's very different than Janet, right? Like kind of opposite.
Actually, I've never heard you guys talk about growing up around like where your early friends were like white or Hispanic or kind of being around that. It actually sounds very similar to I guess mine. But maybe it's just that when the formative years of when you're a teenager, I wasn't around a lot of like Asian American people, right? So I think that's like a differentiator. But my earliest memory of being around other types of people it was going to like preschool. And so when I was in preschool, my mom kind of arranged play dates with these two other students, like really young kids. One was this Korean girl. So, I was like, okay, I kind of get along with her and I look like her. Of course, we couldn't speak the same language. And then the other was this like little white boy. And so I still remember when they would come to our house and like I, at this point, was maybe like 3 or 4. So I still didn't speak English very well. And in order to communicate with them, I would always run back and forth to my mom to ask her how to say something in English. So I think that was the first introduction of like understanding that I was different, but also that the people around me were different. And I grew up on a street with like 4 to 5 houses of all these other girls who were a combination of like Caucasian and Vietnamese, and we would play, we would go over to each other's homes when we were younger to play. So I have very distinct like memories of walking into like how the households are different, right? So when you go into like a white household, the smell tends to be very like potpourri or it would smell like I don't know, like, or like one of the girls, like her dad like was always like very handy, so sometimes it would smell like fresh paint and things like that. And then when you go into like, that's very contrasting from my house, is that it always smells like the last meal that you cooked, right? And then also of course the quintessential shoes, wearing your shoes. Like whenever I went to my friends' homes who were like Caucasian, you just keep your shoes on, and whenever they would come over, it was a thing we have like, please take off your shoes. And even like when we would have like play dates there for a long period of time, like you would cross into meals. So I still remember like I would have, and I think this is kind of an Asian cultural thing too, like to have like food envy for Americanized food. So when I was at my friend's house, her dad would make her like quesadillas and nachos. I was like, what is this? Like my mind is
Yeah.
a lot of memories like that. So that would be more of like a distinguishment of how I was like different, or an understanding of my culture. But also in school, I don't know if you guys had this experience, but my mom always loved to dress me in like super bright and like crazy patterned clothes. And I think that there's something in maybe like Chinese culture where like bright colors and like loud patterns are like associated with like positivity and luck, or I don't know what it is, but she was always drawn to like bright colors, and I always felt so like embarrassed by that. And that was something that for some reason, maybe because I associated that with like some of the stuff you hear about like being like fresh off the boat or whatever like that, like your sense of style is like super crazy. Like that to me was like a big distinguishing memory of like not liking bright colors. And I think to this day, maybe that's why like when I started being able to purchase my own clothes, I always skew to a very like muted pattern and palette, because I have so many memories from childhood of being just like super like bright and like patterned.
Yeah, I think for me it was less so about the clothing, because yes, I for sure was dressed up in like very bright, loud, floral print type clothing, but I don't think I was ever aware of like, oh, this is embarrassing. But it's more of like the hairstyle. So having that bowl cut for such a freaking long period of time. I remember when my hair started growing out and I was like, Mom, you need to put this into 2 ponytails. Like that was my thing when I was, I don't know, like in middle school. So she had to wake up for work at like 5 a.m. But every night before we went to sleep, I would have her do my hair. So it's like perfectly split down the middle, and it'd be like pigtails, like half pigtails though. And it'd have to be like perfectly symmetrical. And then I would sleep on my face. So that it didn't mess up my hair.
With like your nose to the pillow?
Yes, that, or like I would sleep on my hands or something and fall asleep with like my hands like supporting my chin.
Oh my
I didn't want to mess
God.
up my hair. And I think that was because I had bowl cut for such a long period of time. And looking back on those pictures, I was like, hell no, never again. I have to have like good hair. So yeah, kind of similar to your clothing story, but more so for hair.
Well, we have Mama Wu to thank for your awesome hairstyle nowadays, right? It's the focus point for you now.
Mel, did you have something like that too?
Hair? I mean, I definitely was traumatized by my mom cutting my hair in the backyard. Like, so many times, like, growing in elementary school, she'll go in the backyard. I had to sit there and wear, like, our kitchen apron, and she'll cut my bangs. Like, I had the Asian bangs for a couple years, and then when I was 10, I was like trying to like, you know, find my own style or whatever, and I was like, Mom, like I want this haircut. It was like a bob from this like Taiwanese actress or something. She's like, my hairstyle's from Hong Kong, he's really good. And I'm just like, I don't know, man, I see how you cut your hair and I don't know if I like it. And I remember going to, because you know, you're a kid, you just go to your parents like hairstylist, right? You don't know.
Yeah.
And my mom brought me to like this guy, and I remember I showed him a photo, and he's like, yeah, I can do that. I left looking like my mom, like a mother's haircut, like a mullet type of thing.
Yes. I have so many stories like that too. Yes. When I was in 5th grade, my mom also was going through her phase of cutting bangs. I was like the first child, so my sister got the better cut when she was like more trained, but mine like went all the way up until I had like the super short. Oh my God, I never...
Short bangs?
Super short bangs. And then, and I would go to my mom's, like, hairstylist person, like, all throughout even junior high, like, for picture day, you know, when you would get your haircut. And and you're like, oh, I want, you look in the magazines and the style is all like more like maybe feathered or like straight lines. And then I come out and it's like a perm, and I was like, what? You know?
Yeah.
Like, you look like an Asian mom.
Speaking of photos, I have a memory of like, never in elementary school, like you'll like have school picture day, and like there'll be that, like, it's like the same company, like all the elementary school uses. You like either pose with a flower, a fishing rod, or like those random things.
Fishing rod?
No? Only mine? Like,
no. I don't know what you're talking about.
Find this.
I just had the like kind of, you put your hands down on some sort of like pole type thing. I don't know.
But the background's the same, right?
Oh, the background was like there was like a mountain spring.
Exactly.
There was like a natural. Yeah.
So when I went to elementary school, like you could either pose like with your hands, you know, crossed, or with a flower. If you're a boy, you could choose a fishing rod. I don't know why that was a thing, but I remember like for me, like I remember my friends or like my classmates would always purchase like the whole full package of the pictures. But growing up in an Asian house, my mom's like, that's such a waste of money. Like, why am I spend money on this kind of pictures? She'd like buy one, and I'm just like, oh, that's it. Like, I feel like a lot of my other non-Asian friends or my classmates would buy the full picture package, but my mom would never buy it. Yeah, I don't know. So when you said picture day, I was like, that's what I thought of.
I don't think I have like any pictures from when I was younger. I don't think they wanted to pay for that.
Exactly. Yeah, they didn't want to pay for it.
Like you were saying, Mel, like Yeah, like even like my like prom photos and stuff, it's complete tangent, but you would save your little wallet sized photos and then give it to your friends.
Yeah.
But like who wants to carry a photo of you and another guy in their wallet? I don't know. It was always like a weird, it's like, hey, take my photo, I'll take your photo. Why does it matter?
I used to want those though. I wanted them. But I was
They were like trading cards.
Yeah, I was also that person, like when I got my senior portraits done, I didn't pay for the full package. My mom took a photo and she photocopied everything in Taiwan for cheaper.
Nice.
So I was like,
Nice.
So that's why if you go to my house, like I still have my photos, but they're like lower quality. You know, whatever.
That's funny.
Just to hop on this topic, you guys are talking about like growing up and stuff in high school. Like I actually remember, I think in high school, like what, you know, your very formative years of your identity, you're trying to figure yourself out. I actually went to my friend's house a lot after school. So my friend Ian, his mom is like half Indonesian, half Dutch. And so all the neighborhood kids would go there. From freshman year to senior year, we'd all go there. And it was just like kind of like the neighborhood household where all the kids would hang out on like after school and go to football games together. And she'll always cook like big meals. Like she'll do like ham and cheese casserole, like spaghetti, taco night, like very kind of more traditionally American food. So in a sense, I kind of felt like I had like a white mom in high school, because all of us would spend time there. She'll take us shopping, go to Limited 2, Forever 21, and like kind of buy us things. And like to this day, she's someone that like when we go back and I go back to Union City, like we'll try to grab dinner with her all the time because she feels like our neighborhood mom. So I kind of had like another mother that who was like your traditional like American mom growing up.
Interesting.
That kind of reminds me of like, so for me, in my high school experience, a thing that stands out about kind of, or like a cultural component, is I was pretty heavily involved in the dance team. And the dance team at my high school, you have like the students are, you know, we would have practices and be really involved, but then also the parents, they had like a parents, not a club, but like the moms would have to get together to help like plan things. And of course, like being in Orange County, and especially for the dance team, a lot of the girls were like, it was for 1 year, it was like super white. And like my mom felt really uncomfortable. And I still remember that tension of like, she just was not comfortable in that setting. She's like, I don't really want to go and hang out with these women. And it just, they didn't really have a lot to relate around. And so, and I would feel guilty about like, I still really wanted to participate in dance team and I was in leadership. And when you're in leadership, it's also like the pressures on the parent to be more involved. So there was definitely that like struggle for me in high school of like, being very like self-focused and also thinking like, oh, to get to college I need to be really involved in these things, but then also feeling like sometimes it was like uncomfortable for my parents. Yeah, so that was a weird dynamic. I don't know if I'm sure other people have kind of had similar things.
No, I think I remember like in middle school when they'd have like the parent teacher conferences, like I wouldn't tell my parents about that because I was like, you, Janet, it's like you don't want to put them in a situation where they might feel uncomfortable or that they can't communicate or whatever it was. So I think I always just like told my teachers like, oh, they can't come today. Was there ever a time when you were ashamed of being Asian?
I do remember, this is not a specific memory, but I remember there were many times when I was younger that if we were in public and my parents were speaking Chinese, that I would be like, no, speak English, or you know, like, so it wasn't a specific instance, but it was a very common thing. I think mostly probably in like elementary school, because I think when you're at that age, you're very sensitive to feeling like different or like standing out. I don't know, do you ladies have any specific memories?
I can totally relate to Janet of the whole, you know, your parents speaking Mandarin in public. When elementary school, my grandma would walk me to the bus stop and she'd always speak Mandarin. And I felt like that's when I knew like people were staring at me, like I was different. And my grandma would always wear like, you know, she's afraid of the sun, so she'd wear those like those sleeves covering her arms, and then she'd wear a hat that would cover her face, and all these different sleeves she's wearing are cartoon like designs, and they didn't match. So I was kind of like, man, I totally stand out with my grandma right now. But to be honest, like that is the only type of embarrassment I felt. It's just like maybe a language thing with my grandma, but like overall, I don't have like a lot of stories of being ashamed, like, you know, bringing certain types of foods. Like I actually really was pretty proud growing up. I think, again, it's because, like, I feel like my mom had to deal with the racism of, you know, assimilating to the American culture versus I didn't have to do that. How about you, Helen?
I think for me, like you were saying, Mel, like, I can't remember ever being ashamed of being Asian. Like, not one moment. But I think throughout my life, there was maybe, like, an essence of, like, just, like, racially tinged self-consciousness. So, like, racist remarks or comments, kind of like that nursery. I remember this nursery rhyme very well. Like, when people said, Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these.
Oh.
Did you ever hear that?
Yeah.
Wait, no.
It's like a nursery rhyme too that a lot of people just like repeated. I feel like it was more background noise that I'd accepted rather than seeing it as outright racism. And I think it's because my parents never taught me to put my guard up or to be like fearful, so it became part of just the norm. But the other time, I guess, is like the Asian glow. That's also one thing in college where I was like, oh, damn it, if I wasn't Asian, then I wouldn't have this like glow.
Actually, Helen, now that you mentioned that or you explained it in that way, which I think is very poignant, that it's kind of this low-level pervasive thing that we just take on, that you kind of just accept. I think that's exemplified by, you know, like I do have a memory now of like going to the orthodontist with my mom, and I had just gotten braces, and the lady was like, oh, you can't drink like sodas because it'll like, you know, rust the braces. And my mom's like, oh, what about using a straw? And then she's like, oh, she scoffed. She's like, well, that's the same thing as drinking the soda, you know? And I remember at the time like looking at my mom, like feeling embarrassed to like, oh, I think it's just an example of like always believing that your parents, because of the language or whatever, that they might have misunderstood or they don't really understand. And then when I got older, I thought about it. I was like, no, that's makes sense. Like a straw would bring the liquid right past your teeth. And so there were moments of that, like now in hindsight, that I kind of regret, where I feel like I might have out in public felt quote unquote embarrassed by my parents, or just assumed that they were like not understanding something or something like that.
But it's like almost hard to remember those moments because it is almost like that was just part of the norm of growing up, that you don't even think about it as like, oh, that was a really racist person and a really racist remark.
Yeah. Or in that instance, it not necessarily out of like race, but just that I would automatically think that my parents were wrong. And that's like, you know what I mean? Because I was like so apologetic for it or something like that. So
you were aware that, you know, your parents were different from the people they were interacting with.
Exactly.
Well, opposite of shame, what were some of your proudest accomplishments that you would relate to being Asian American?
I would say, this is going to be super cliched, but you know how they say that Asian people are good at math? So I wasn't naturally good at math. I put in a lot of time and effort, but I ended up majoring in math in college. It was something that I, in hindsight, really, really appreciate. And I think because it really taught me to push myself, I think that it really helped me exercise like abstract thinking. And it's something that I think, because I was raised Asian American, it's not just math, but it was just like anything quantitative or more challenging or more numerical was like encouraged. And that is something that I think that drives towards like challenging myself and valuing education and prioritizing all of that is something that I associate with my cultural upbringing. How about you, ladies?
I think also in lines with Janet, I think we all agree that getting into a really good university is a huge accomplishment. It gives something for your parents to boast about. I know my mom does it all the time. Like, she's so proud of my brother and I for getting like to like top universities in California. So that's one thing. Another thing that pops in my mind that might be kind of not directly related to being Asian American was that like in high school, like I actually won homecoming my sophomore year. And for me, I felt that was a win of a child of an immigrant who grew up in American culture, where knowing that homecoming and like all these like kind of like weird American values are a thing like in a high school culture. Because my mom in high school, she was the nerd. She was the one that went to the science club. She definitely had some bullying when she first immigrated to the US. So I feel like something like homecoming, where it's like a prestigious title in high school, that I won that, and she came to the game when I like went on the car. So I felt like that was a moment not only for me but for her too. So I thought that was really sweet. Also like a subtle brag that yes, I did win homecoming. So I was kind of royalty. Just kidding. How about you, Helen?
I remember when I was younger, like in middle school, I honestly thought I was like dumb, like legit dumb. I can't even say dumb. I was dumb, which now when I think about it, I think was actually just like a heavy case of like OCD. Like, I remember reading Where the Red Fern Grows, which is one of my favorite books, and I was on the first page for like 20 minutes. Well, I was reading the first line for like 10 minutes because I needed to read the words in a certain way where the words would be like absorbed into my mind rather than just like glancing over it. So I think throughout my childhood, my parents and my sister thought that I was like special just when it came to reading though. So I would say that one of my proudest accomplishments was like getting into a good high school and a good college and proving that I wasn't dumb. But then the proudest was probably getting a good job, because there was so much competition for the job that I was going for. And I distinctly remember the interview room was filled with a lot of white guys going for all the finance positions. So I did not think that I was going to get the job. But I think like my proudest was probably getting a promotion at work to manager, Because I think once I bought into that system and understood that there were so many like microaggressions against not only Asians but also women too, like, and particularly being in the combo of like Asian and female, getting a promotion based on merit and being able to like survive the additional difficulty of being Asian and female meant a lot. And like you were saying, Mel, I think seeing how proud my parents were of me was just like, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not dumb.
Far from it.
I think another thing I want to add is like, this pertains to us. Like, I feel like my mom, like I mentioned this so much in previous episodes, but as we're talking about being proud, like my mom is very active on Facebook. She posts almost every week. Whenever she goes to vacation, she wants to post. But she'll always, like, when ABG like gets something, or like we got an award last year, or like we were able to attend a gala, she'll always share a photo of us on her Facebook saying, look at my daughter, look at her friends, she was able to make this. And like, I think for me, like for her, me being like self-made in a sense, like where I was able to like, you know, find myself in my career and do all these things, be independent versus like having it passed down from a family. She's so proud of that because she feels like she taught me well. And the result of her, of course, but like, I think as we accomplish more with ABG, she really like takes it in and really uses it as like, look at my daughter, or like, look at my son. Like, she feels very proud of what we're doing.
Yeah, I would definitely echo. I feel like another one of my proud moments is being able to share that we're doing this podcast with my parents, and really being able to see that their reaction is a genuine and authentic like sense of like, wow, that is really great that you're doing that, and for them to really resonate with that. Because like I had talked about, like they are also somewhat, you know, like they immigrated from Taiwan, but their parents immigrated to Taiwan from China, so they, I think, understand the struggle of being very in between and a little bit not quite one, you know, culture and not quite the other.
Yeah.
I guess our proudest moments are when we make our parents proud. That's cute.
Yeah, that is a good conclusion.
I hope my children say that about me one day.
You know, same. Or would it be that parent that's being like, you know, when I was your age, I made your grandparents very proud, so I respect the same out of you.
I wonder if what will be the next form of like a podcast in the future.
Oh my gosh, VR.
Oh, yes, VR.
Yes.
That'd be so
our kids
cool.
are gonna have to form some sort of VR thingamabob. I don't know.
Like, how cool is it if our kids could like create this VR system where like we could go back to a time where our grandparents were alive and like kind of see how they were living.
That's very, I mean, that's already Google Maps.
Yeah.
You can already do that with Google Maps, but even more so,
Yeah,
right?
but more like
rewind
like
time.
1950. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be super
That'd be
cool. Oh, whoever is out there creating a VR app,
hit us
do
up.
it.
Yeah, let me know. Let us know.
I mean, don't hit us up because we can't help you with anything. But once you finish it, let us know.
Skillshare is the sponsor of today's episode of Asian Boss Girl. We know a lot of you work on creative side hustle projects or have the desire to start one. One of the main factors in achieving this goal is finding the right resources to develop your interests and skills. Skillshare is a great resource that offers classes designed for real life, so you can move your creative journey forward without putting life on hold.
They offer a wide variety of classes, like calligraphy essentials and Instagram-worthy photography. Or if you're looking for more lifestyle classes, they offer interior design basics, simple steps to your perfect space. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with classes from Skillshare.
Skillshare is also incredibly affordable, especially when compared to pricey in-person classes and workshops. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. Explore your creativity at Skillshare.com/ABG and get 2 free months of premium membership. That's right. Skillshare is offering Asian Boss Girl listeners 2 free months of unlimited access to thousands of classes. Head to Skillshare.com/ABG.
There's a prevailing stereotype that Asian women all have stick straight jet black hair, but that's just not the case. One of the main points we make on this podcast is how even though we are all Asian American women, we are all really different, and that goes for our hair too. Janet has short, dark, but not quite black straight hair. Mel has thick, somewhat wavy brown hair with golden highlights, and me, I have long gray blonde textured hair.
Function of Beauty formulates every bottle based on our unique hair types and hair goals. They gather your information through a quiz, and you can customize with the fragrance and color. The last part, which we had a lot of fun with, was adding your name to be printed on the bottle. So we went with our nicknames for each other: Woo Woo, Mel Mel, and Jan Jan.
They are vegan, cruelty-free, and never use sulfites, parabens, phthalates, or mineral oils. They're offering our listeners a savings of 20% on your first purchase. Go to functionofbeauty.com/ABG to take your 4-part hair profile quiz and save 20% on your first order. Don't spend another minute in hair misery. Go to functionofbeauty.com/ABG to let them know that we sent you. That's functionofbeauty.com/ABG.
All right, ladies. So what do you hear when someone says, "What are you? Where are you from?"
I freaking hate that question, guys. I will say that I
Really?
do not. Yeah, I don't. I feel like my blood actually boils when I hear this question, especially in a day and age where I give people the benefit of the doubt of being a little bit more woke. I feel like anytime someone that, I'll say that isn't Asian, asking me this question, I feel like they're using it to categorize me and put me into a box of someone that they have in mind for what a Chinese person is like, what a Korean person is like, or a Vietnamese or whatever. And it makes me feel like they're saying, let me label you so that I feel comfortable. Like when you're doing that, it doesn't make me actually feel seen as a person, even though you're learning a little bit about me. So yeah, I remember this like distinct moment when I was solo traveling in Italy, and I don't know what it was about the region I was at, but I was asked that question at least 3 times, and I was just like, what the heck? And they were like, also I think trying to hit on me too, and I was just like, that is not the right question to start off with. I think that question just like really makes me upset.
I think maybe a little bit of a different reaction. I mean, if someone said, "What are you?" I think I would be offended.
Yeah.
But if they asked me like, "Where are you from?" I always kind of default to believing that someone is trying to make a connection with me. And I also think that question sometimes is similar to like asking you like, "Oh, what do you do for work?" or something. It's like there, and I don't think that's like necessarily right. But I think maybe for me, because I haven't had too many interactions that were negative, I kind of always default to being like, "Oh, they're trying to make a connection." But if they ask me, "What are you?" I think that's a little bit, like wording and the context. Like Helen, if you were saying, if I felt like someone's like trying to hit on me or doing something like that, then I think my defenses would be up. But usually when I've been asked that question, it's been more like at an open networking type event where it feels more like either professional, semi-professional, or like social but like platonic.
But I think specifically the question of like, where are you from, indicates that you're not from America, right? It's like it's more like, what is your ethnicity would be maybe the more appropriate question to ask, because where are you from just indicates that you're like a foreigner based
That's true.
on
Actually,
the color of your skin.
Yeah. Let me rephrase that. If someone asks me where I'm from, I usually say like where, like Orange County. But if I'm being asked my race, usually it's like they'll ask like, can I ask what your cultural background is or what your ethnicity is? And that one I would not be as offended. Although I think it's once again the context. If you felt like it was coming from someone with like bad intentions and they were saying, what is your culture with your ethnicity, then it feels like off.
The intention of it is always like a huge switch. How about for you, Mel? What if someone came up to you and said, "Where are you from, girl?"
And they say it like that, I'd be like, "Nowhere near you." No. I do think I fall victim because I actually asked this question a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I asked this question amongst the Asian community because there's so many different Asian identities, right? So for me, it is a way for me to figure out like how to connect with you, because like obviously, being Taiwanese American versus Vietnamese American is a very different thing. So me understanding like, oh, this is probably your family culture, because like I do have a lot of Vietnamese American friends. So growing up with them, I know like, oh, like maybe this is a custom they do that's different than from me. But I asked that just to connect. If an Asian person would ask me what's my ethnic background, I wouldn't be offended by it. But if someone else were to ask me that wasn't Asian, I feel like, why does it matter? Yeah. Because I don't know what their intentions are really. But maybe they are trying to connect too.
Especially if they follow up with the question about like, where are you really from, right? Like you say, like Janet, if you were to say from Orange County, and then they're like, no, where are you really from?
That would be very different.
Then it's like, bitch.
Yeah. Or the thing that I always do is I turn it around on them too. So if they ask me where I'm from, and then if it feels like they're asking about my culture, and then I ask them like, oh, where are you from? Or like where's your ancestral background or something.
That's Janet's way of like silently like being she's like she has a way with her words. So where are you from then?
I can see that too. It's like a little mini stab.
Yeah. I always say Janet has, that capability.
That little fire. Yes.
But I do have to say, like, I think I've been really fortunate enough to not have that question asked a lot to me. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I think the older that I've gotten, the more that I'm just like aware of different intentions behind that question. I haven't heard that question in a long time, but I just remember when I was in Italy and there were so many people that asked me that, I was just like, holy shit, because there weren't a lot of Asian people where I was either. So I think they were thinking that I was a foreigner and like being maybe closer to Asia. Is it close? Europe, Asia. yeah, it's not that much closure. But yeah, they were probably like curious of that, where I was actually from.
Are there certain AAPIs in the spotlight that inspire you, or like anyone who is kind of more well-known has done something that you find really inspiring?
You ladies inspire me.
Aww.
I'm looking at Mel's face on Zoom right now, and she's like, bullshit.
Those are lies, Helen.
No, like for real though, like you ladies for sure. That wasn't my answer, but I do mean that.
Aww.
But someone that I haven't talked about on this podcast that I admire very, very much is Jamila Jamil. Do you guys know who she
Yeah.
is? She plays Tahani on The Good Place. So she is from England, and she's half Indian and half Pakistani. And she always says that she's like very proud to be completely Asian, and she advocates for the lack of racial diversity in the entertainment industry. And that she's like, I'm proud to be full Asian, not a mix. And I think it's just like very empowering to hear that from someone in the industry when they might want to just like kind of blend in and not really distinguish themselves based on their identity, right? But she had like a number of complications when she was younger. Like she can only hear like 50% or something like that. And she was diagnosed with a genetic disorder, and she also suffered from an eating disorder. So she is someone who I feel like has been through so much bad in her life and is actively doing so much good as a role model, advocating for body neutrality with her I Weigh initiative on Instagram. You guys look that up. She like lashes out against the Kardashians for promoting diet programs and fit tea ads that are like really harming young girls out there. So she's someone that I'd never talked about before, but I think she's such an incredible role model. I look up to her. What about you ladies?
So 2 people I look up to are Leanne Kim and Brian Hu from the Pacific Arts Movement, and they're the ones that put on the San Diego Asian Film Festival, and it was the internship I was a part of in college. At the time, Leanne was a director of Pac Arts, and Brian is still the programming director. And they're just people that really exposed me to the Asian American film and media world. Even though it's been almost 8 years, I still see them pushing with representation through like, film initiatives, or like Leanne's still part of other community groups that really just like are pushing for Asian American representation. And like they're not in the spotlight, but have been in the community for so many years, and like I just really admire them for what they do and their tenacity. And Brian actually is a professor of Asian American cinema and was one of the first Asian American film critics, and he teaches in San Diego. And so whenever I see them, which is like so rare, I like always get a warm feeling and a very like nostalgic memory of them in college, because I feel like I was so inspired by them, and I still am to this day. And yeah, like they're just people I've always remember. I think our friend Dan Matthews can also speak really highly of them. Dan came from Pac Arts. Taylor Chan came from Pac. Like a lot of us came from this organization that really just like kind of built this foundation for us to really like thrive and learn more about the Asian American film world. So there are 2 people that I always look up to and still admire to this day.
I've heard so many good things about them from both you and Dan.
Yeah.
And they seem like people that really actually like changed maybe even the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
Go Leanne and Brian.
Have you, Janet?
I really look up to Eva Chen. She's Chinese American, and she started her career actually in fashion, and I think editorial fashion, so within like journalism. Now she has written a couple of children's books, and also I believe leads like partnerships or something at Instagram. She's Chinese, and her husband is British, and they have 2 kids together. And she's very active on Instagram, and I love watching the way that they kind of integrate her cultural background with her children. So her parents are very active in their life, and it's just something that I love to see, that there's a cultural component of having, a husband with a different cultural background, how you raise your kids together, but then also for her how to have like a full career as a woman, and then also to be a mom and to be a wife. So I just find her very inspiring, and her children's books have also been specifically around like stories that are focused on like women and teaching younger girls about like famous, well-known, strong women. Another person that I think is really inspiring is Alexander Wang. So I think for the younger generation, he is someone who, first of all, just as a person, anytime I've seen kind of like videos or content that he puts out about himself, he's very like unapologetically kind of quirky, and he's very kind of forward with his Taiwanese culture. But also his brand, I think that for our generation to have something that is so quintessentially like Chinese, like his last name Wang, to have that be something associated with something that's very fashionable and cool, I think is really awesome. Like I would have loved to have that growing up when I was in junior high.
Yeah.
I've seen his slippers that say Wang on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, You should get it. And when I get married, if I take the last name, I should get it.
Matching.
And then Eric should get it. Or Philip should get it. Matching. Wang, wang, wang.
Yeah. So Alexander
Melly
Wang,
can wear
if
it
you want
too.
to sponsor us.
Yeah. And if you have any other cousins or any brothers named Wang, I want to marry one, I guess. So I can wear the slippers.
Well, I feel like only recently have we really started to see this like momentum of AAPIs, right? With the rise of like Hollywood stars like Awkwafina, Sandra Oh winning an Emmy, Simu becoming our next Marvel superhero, Parasite winning 6 Oscars in 1 year. Media really does drive perception, and the perception right now is that AAPIs are just starting to be recognized, which is really cool. So maybe something fun to think about when we hit the age of 50, which, ladies, it's really not that far from now. What is your idealistic and realistic view of the landscape of AAPIs?
Well, I think it'd be really idealistic if, being represented is no longer a thing we're fighting for, or we're able to carve a space for ourselves in entertainment like the Black community has done. For in terms of, the corporate world, I think it'd be, great to see more Asian Americans, men and women, on executive boards, and not just on middle management. And also, just for the younger generation, I'd love to see younger kids in college pursuing careers and majors that they truly want to do versus something their parents want them to do, which is something I don't know if it's going to happen in the next 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
No, I completely agree with you, especially on your second point too. I really want our generation to become so successful in so many different industries to show the next generation of kids, like our kids, that they don't have to feel guilty if they want to do something other than be like a doctor or a lawyer, and that they can find success in pursuing their passions. And like you were saying also, Mel, not just middle management, but even I think about the D&I initiatives of a lot of these companies out there. Sometimes it's almost like a small budget or an afterthought or a token necessity of a company. But hopefully when we're 50, those become more full-fledged supported networks involving not just the people who fall under the D&I initiatives, but everyone at the company wanting to show up and support it too.
Yeah. I mean, I would just echo everything you ladies are saying. I think it's a lot of having the building blocks of all industries are kind of, I think a lot of human nature is built off of relationships, right? So the more that we can get people who are of Asian descent in different industries in positions of power, then there's a natural kind of relationship there for that community to develop. And yeah, when I kind of was thinking through this question, my first thought was also what is the kind of world that I want my children to grow up in? And I would love for them to be in a place where, whether it's on TV or in school or wherever it is, to feel like they can see themselves in any story and any narrative.
Yeah. And something else that I think of too is I really want mental health to no longer be a stigma within Asian culture. And also if there were hundreds of Asian Boss Girl type podcasts out there, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I will say that I predict that maybe even within our lifetime, I feel like the divide in our country is actually going to get worse before it gets better, especially with minorities getting better jobs and taking over jobs that are not just running nail salons and laundromats and Chinese restaurants, right? I feel like the racism is probably going to be even more rampant given the current state. And China itself, I'm thinking just about China right now, but they are the fastest growing economy. I think there's going to be a wave of people wanting to understand their culture and their heritage a little bit more and going back to China to raise their kids. I know my parents fled China because of how bad it was there, right? In the 60s or 70s, I can't remember. But it's I think there's going to be a wave of people that want to just feel comfortable living somewhere.
That makes sense. I mean, I think it's if you look at kind of because they came here for more economic opportunity, and if now China is proving to be a very lucrative economic a place for economic opportunity, that's a very real thing. Yeah.
I wonder if that's going to happen in our lifetime.
Do you think you're gonna want to take your kids and raise them there?
I mean, that's probably going to be hopefully in the next couple of years, so probably not, but maybe their kids.
Yeah, the next generation. How crazy. So it would be American Boss Girls if they started podcasting.
Whoa, that's rare. Yeah. Well, speaking of our family lineage and our kids, assuming at the age of 50, how would you pass down your Asian American heritage to your kids and your family?
Ooh. I think it's these things are kind of easy to say before you actually have to implement them, right? Because I think it will be hard. But when I've seen a lot of like my friends who are of different ethnic backgrounds and how they're raising their kids, I think, and Mel, I think you've mentioned this before too, but being around the grandparents who naturally speak the language and naturally kind of behave in ways that support the values of the culture is like a really good way to kind of to pass the culture on. And language wise, like I would love to say that I want them to speak and write, but I think realistically, I don't know how easy that will be to implement. I would, however, at least like them to understand the language. And I think that would be like being around my parents and having them speak Chinese to them.
Yeah. Like thinking back to, or just like reminiscing a lot on our childhood, the last episode and this episode, and thinking about like the complexity of just growing up in such a close-knit, like 3-story family household surrounded by Asian food, culture, traditions, and also feeling kind of like I'm losing that a little bit. Like even the language and being able to speak to my parents, and like thinking about not having a Chinese wedding and not really knowing what to do for like Chinese New Year. Like, what am I supposed to put around the house? And what am I supposed to buy red underwear? Like, am I supposed to like stomp shit? Like these things, I feel like my mom is the one who told me, and I'm kind of losing that a little bit. It is incredibly important to me that my kids can speak the language, whether it's Mandarin and Toisanese. I know my mom would come over to help me take care of the kids, and I already told her, I was like, Mom, you have to speak Mandarin to them, you have to speak Toisanese to them, and just like fully talk to them, and I'll learn too. You know, I'll learn Mandarin and I'll do it at the same time. I want them to know their grandparents. I want them to know their traditions. Yeah. And recently I started cooking Chinese herbal soup at home. And it tastes like, it's just like the smell of it, the aroma that fills your house, and just like the ginseng and like the red dates and the goji berries. It's like, it's so homey, and it's nice to like have that feeling, you know? And I want to be able to give that to my kids too, hopefully.
Yeah, I think as you guys are speaking, I feel like one thing we can do, like, so, you know, we're all friends. I'm assuming we're going to have our kids and like spend time together with, like, we're going to have a lot of family gatherings within just amongst our 3 families. I think it'd be nice to like instill culture, if we can, to our kids about even like food. Like, what are things we can make for our kid, like when our kids are getting together, for them to eat, or like what are we doing like together as a collective, like a friend group, to like make sure that we're passing it down, because like, you know, our friend group is predominantly Asian American, so I do think we have all these different Asian backgrounds that we can, you know, share with our family and our kids, with each other. So that'd be really cool. I think like you guys, I definitely agree. Language is a huge thing, and it's hard because like I feel like my Mandarin is fleeting. I can barely speak it that well. Like both you guys said, my mom she already knows, like, when I get married and have kids, there's a room designated for her when I have a child. And I'm like, this is for you. And I go, Mom, you have to speak Mandarin, because like I speak English. You know, we speak English with each other. She's like, you know, to be honest, it's gonna be difficult for me because I speak English with you, so it's gonna be like a change for me to speak Mandarin with your child. But luckily, my stepdad speaks like fluent Mandarin. Like, we speak in Mandarin, so I'm hoping with that, like, that could help, you know, with the language with my kids. And then like, you know, even like watching, like, because I grew up watching so much Taiwanese shows and like Korean shows, so I feel like that's how I learned the language, is like just absorbing myself in like pop culture. So for me, like, even just like music, or like that little child show called Ni Hao Kai Lan, I'm hoping like I'm hoping by the time I have kids, there's like different versions of that I could share with my kids.
Yeah, I should watch that show.
Ni Hao Kai Lan. Yeah.
I'll start watching it.
We can watch it together, you know. Taking your kids back to the motherland is such a huge thing. Like, I feel like my level of pride for my identity and culture has like increased and surged just because of that, just being exposed. And I feel like if I can I can't afford it, I would love to take my kids back to Taiwan and be like, this is where your grandma went to school. This is what I ate growing up. Like, these are little customs that you just understand by being and living in the culture. So if I can, I would love to take them back.
Same. Yeah, I think about that too. I think about like I would want to bring them to show them where their grandparents grew up, and then also just like explore. I mean, China's so freaking huge. It's like just going to explore, just to kind of like find your roots. Yeah. Kind of a journey, you know. That's something I definitely want to do.
Yeah. Would you guys consider taking them like what is a good age? Because, you know, they say there's that differentiator between how early is it that they may not remember.
Maybe like 4 or 6, because I think that's the first time I ever went to visit the motherland, and I have memories from then. So yeah, probably. Yeah. I feel like that question is usually asked from parents who are like, at what age should I bring my kids to Disneyland?
Yeah. Just drop the like $100+ ticket for to see if they'll remember. Yeah.
You know what I would do though, because my uncle did this with my cousin, and I kind of did it with my grandma did this with me. But my mom has expressed, very openly that when she retires with my dad, that she'd love to spend half her time in Taiwan and half her time in Northern California. So she's looking to maybe whether move into a property or whatever in Taiwan, because you can have dual citizenship. I would love to send my kids there over the summer, and so they can have really good relationship bonding time with their grandparents. And it's also I'm gonna miss my kids, but I feel like they would benefit so much from that. And I would love my grandparents to really just form a really strong bond, because my cousin and myself, we're the ones that were able to do that with my grandparents, and we're the closest with my grandma because of that. So if that is an option, I would totally send my kids there for 2 months.
I'll send my kids there too.
Yeah. Same.
Auntie, Grandma Chen or whatever.
Grandma
we'll take
Chang.
the kids. Yeah.
Here's 6 kids coming your way. She runs her own summer program.
She'd be like, oh, I thought I was relaxing and retiring in relaxation. I guess I'm opening up a child rearing service. Right? Yeah, I had this thought when I was taking a bathroom break. I just would love if all 3 of us, once we get married or have kids, it'd be so much fun to bring our families to our motherlands, even learn about each other's cultures more. And I think our kids would love it. If we could afford it, I think it'd be so much fun.
Yeah, I think, and in addition to trips, it's things like the holidays, right? Like Chinese New Year, Moon Festival, for us to kind of make that the way that you would celebrate Christmas or Thanksgiving, and to really be able to, because I feel even as I've gotten older, we Chinese New Year becomes less of a thing in my household just because we're not as together as much anymore. So it'd be great to be able to create that for my own family.
Yeah. Wait, have we celebrated Chinese New Year with each other, with our friends? I know this year we were celebrating.
Maybe that's something we can focus on more, is to make, to do a proper celebration.
Yeah, this year our friend Lucia, she brought a couple of friends together, and she made the fish, and she made some dumplings, and she's I'm going to do this annually. So yeah, maybe we can contribute to the next one. We know that many of our ABGs and ABBs lead busy lives, and having to figure out what to eat can feel like just another thing on your to-do list. As a nice alternative to takeout, we like brands like Daily Harvest, a subscription food service that delivers clean, plant-based meals and smoothies to your door. It's very easy to customize and manage your orders, and each item takes just a couple of minutes to prepare.
Their Brussels sprouts and lime pad thai harvest bowl is delicious. You can add a fried egg or roasted chicken on to top it off for the perfect healthy meal. They never use preservatives, added sugar, or artificial ingredients. Their fruits and vegetables are flash frozen on location, meaning they allow it to fully ripen on the vine and freeze right away, versus other frozen foods which are picked prematurely and ripen in a warehouse.
In addition to smoothies, bowls, and soups, they also have flatbreads and dessert bites. Their packaging is also now 100% recyclable. Go to dailyharvest.com and enter promo code ABG to get $25 off your first box. That's promo code ABG for $25 off your first box at dailyharvest.com.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this episode. Again, May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We thought it would be a good time to bring in, our experiences with our childhood and our relationships with our cultural identities, and also how that is sort of shaping and forming as we grow older and older. So thank you for joining in, and be sure to tag your own story, perhaps on Instagram. Maybe take a screenshot of the episode on your phone and then write your story over it, and we'll be happy to share that on our IG stories.
You can find us on all the podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We are Asian Boss Girl. And if you'd like to support us through monthly donations, you can now find us on anchor.fm/AsianBossGirl/support.
Yeah, and we also have really amazing partnerships that we'll be happy to share with you all. We have a partnership with BetterHelp, Daily Harvest, and Ritual Vitamins. So make sure to go to asianbossgirl.com/partnerships for our discount codes.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.